Leslie, when does negotiation start in your mentality?
Yeah, I'm in the same thought process here. It's the very first ask from your prospect or your client. So especially BDRs, SDRs in this room, a lot of times I hear, "Oh, but I'm not negotiating," because I think about pricing. A lot of people make that connection of pricing and negotiation. But I think when they ask for a meeting, we're negotiating. We're then asking them back to accept our invite or to confirm their attendance. When they're asking for more information, we're asking them to give us more information back about their team, or we're asking them for what they want to learn about, or we're asking them to get time on the calendar to review. Any of these sort of negotiations, even from the very beginning of the deal, anytime they start asking us a question, I think that that helps us condition them that we're going to have this back and forth, this negotiation throughout the sales process. So starting that negotiation in the very first step is so crucial.
Yeah, look, I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers. A lot of people may not necessarily like this very much, but win-win is the biggest piece of nonsense that's ever been spouted in the negotiation world. And when I say that, it sounds controversial, but here's why. Win-win presupposes a few things. First of all, let's think about what win-win actually is. What is, if you win and I win, how could we both win? That's called a draw, right? It also means that if you win and I win, we have to know what the complete value of the deal is to you and to me over the entire lifespan of that deal. And we have to divide that value up evenly between both parties so that we both win. Almost impossible. It also presupposes that if I have more leverage than you and I have more ability than you and you have less leverage than me, I have to advocate for your needs and wants so that you get up to even, so that you take away a win. That's bananas. That's not going to happen. It's insane. Most people who believe in win-win, whenever I say, hey, why do you believe in win-win? They say, well, I want the other party to feel like they've won. And then I say, aha, what does that mean, though? That's not an actual win for the counterparty. If the other party just feels like they've won, that's not a real win. Now we're talking about persuasion. Now we're talking about influence. Win-win is nonsense. Mutually beneficial is a thing. Mutually beneficial is a thing. And I think that that's what most people think that win-win means. But they are very, very different things. And whenever I say that, everyone gets really, really angry. But that's just the way it is.
All right, Leslie, you know that I got to get you in here for this. So what's your thoughts on the win-win?
I agree. I think about it from a mutually beneficial. And I got weird analogies. I always equate this to carrying in the groceries. Can I just get like a shout out in the chat? Who's the person who refuses to make more than one trip from their vehicle inside with their groceries? And you're going to stack your arms full of groceries.
I will carry 1,000 bags, 1,000. I will get them all on my arms and farmers walk them into the house. I will.
Right, exactly. But I feel like, your dominant arm is going to be stronger. You're like, oh, I can stack the milk and the orange juice on my right arm. And you're like thinking about like how we're going to balance it. It's not going to be equal, but both arms have groceries and both arms are doing their part. And I know that this is like a crazy analogy, but I think about that where it's like both arms are winning, we're all winning, and it's mutually beneficial. So win-win. And maybe I'm just not a sports person, like #sports, go team. I don't think about the analytics of the words, but Mark, words matter, especially in negotiation. And these little tiny nuances, I love that you point this out because I say win-win and I mean mutually beneficial, but the word choice really does matter because it is a draw. So I'm going with the grocery analogy, and I am going to change my language from win-win to mutually beneficial. So
I love it. I love it. We changing minds out here, y'all. We changing minds. Mark, look at some of these responses here. Time preparing for negotiation. Many people say 30 minutes. Is there a magic number in your experience?
Yeah, 2x. So 2x, however long you're going to be spending with someone negotiating, is generally the amount of time that you should be putting in terms of negotiating preparation. And that goes down to like all the way down to the foundation, identifying what you need and want. And by the way, when I say need and want, like most salespeople are like, I need a good deal. And I say, great. And what does that actually mean? That doesn't actually mean anything. Like, what are the components of that good deal that are going to drive success for the organization? What term do you want? What pricing do you want? What warranties do you want? How long do you want it to be? All of those things are parts of the negotiation that you need to be negotiating for. And the more components that you have, the easier it becomes to start trading those things and to start making it a more value-added negotiation. Otherwise, if you say things like, I want a good deal, that doesn't actually mean anything. So we've got to get more focused on what drives a good deal. Once you can understand what drives a good deal for you, then you can start negotiating for things that make sense.
That's strong advice right there. Leslie, what are your thoughts on that strategy, that line of thinking? And then I've got something that I think is interesting.
Yeah, like defining what that means, just like anything, like I want to hit quota. Cool. How are you going to get there? What's the path? And I think that from a sales perspective, asking the client to define that, because it's going to mean something different for each person who's involved at the table. So we were just talking about, and I'm picking on procurement a little bit, right? But if they're mitigating risk and they're looking for cost savings, their definition is much different than an end user. And so understanding what that means to people and where they're, what the give and take is going to be, becomes so much more important. I think a lot of times we jump to the conclusion before they're able to tell us what it is a good deal means to them. So just asking those clarifying questions the same way we would in discovery, applying that to the negotiation. Okay, you want a discount. What does that mean to you? Why? What are you going to do with that? What's the purpose? What are you looking for exactly when you say discount? Tell me more about that. The same way we would in discovery.
Mark.
I agree.
And that's guys, we're out.
pretty much nailed it, right? I think a lot of people, when they try and start the negotiation process with planning or preparation, it seems overwhelming, right? There is a lot that because you're like, okay, I know where I want to be in terms of where the end state is, but how do I get there? The key here is to break it down as simply as humanly possible to make sure that you're addressing and this is where a lot of salespeople fail, is they're very and I'm not saying this is a failure, but they're very customer focused in spite of being non-focused on themselves. They're not, so they don't really know what they need or want. They know what the customer needs or want, but they may not necessarily know what they need or want. So they're driving for the win at the expense of their own needs and wants a lot of the time. And we make sacrifices and concessions within the negotiation to try and achieve all of those amazing customer needs and wants, which are important, but we often just give away things in a negotiation that don't necessarily make sense. And the more that you can plan up front for that and to know what you need or want and to know what you might be willing to give away, keyword might, be willing to give away in a negotiation, it becomes a lot easier to manage your concessions on an ongoing basis.
Pitch, pace, volume. Why is this important to master?
So there's two big things that you need to think about when it comes to the implementation of your negotiation. We talked a little bit about surface level, about strategy, but when you talk to the tactics of things, there's really two big things. So one is the body language that you use. The other thing is how you say something, right? So pitch, pace, tone, and volume are the 4 different ways that you can modulate your voice to change how something sounds. So a high pitch, that's how high or how low, may give away certain things that you don't necessarily want to give away. Slowing down or speeding up. Tone, like my wife could say to me, for example, she could say, "Oh, sweetheart, you did this?" Or she could say, "Sweetheart, you did this?" Now, those are the same words, but totally they mean very different things. And then volume is how loud or how soft you are. And practicing all of that is really, really important, because we saw just in that little example that I gave you that you can say the same thing different ways to give it a different meaning. So managing your pitch, pace, tone, and volume is key. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand about negotiation. They think that just because someone has a high-pitched voice, or maybe they're speeding up, it means that they're nervous. It doesn't. You have to look at a lot of body language cues and a lot of things that the person is doing in unison together to be able to get an indication as to whether or not there may be deceit or whether or not there may be a lie. So don't just take one body language cue on its own and then say, oh, they must be lying. No, not necessarily true. You've got to be able to package it all together. But those things with your voice are really important. Also, look at and practice when you record your role plays, because you should all be recording your role plays. When you record your role plays, listen to how you sound when you give an answer to someone. So if James is a procurement guy and I'm a salesperson and he says, hey, Mark, we need a discount. And I say, well, James, there might, and that immediate pitch increase after seeing what my normal pitch is should give James an indication that he should be digging into that and saying, okay, there's something here. We need to dig into this a little bit. So maintaining your pitch when you're asked difficult questions is really, really important. All of that becomes critical.
That's why he's the negotiations ninja, y'all, because he picks up on stuff like that. So
I think like in my experience, it depends on internally, but I would make a list with your leadership team to make sure they're cleared. If you can add an extra level of service package or something in something from your account management team, like an additional call to go over their accounts that maybe they're not receiving now and how to best utilize your product, your service, or even including them on roadmap conversations. So if you have beta groups of clients who are doing things like sometimes that is perceived as value add, it is value add for prospects. Mark, would you like thumbs up half of those maybe?
Yeah, all of those things are great. I think all of those things are great. And also just know going in what you're willing to give away. And this is where
Have
a
your
lot of
list.
people fail in their negotiations is they don't know what it is they're even willing to give away and how much of those things that they're, because it's not binary, right? It's like we have something. It's not that we just give it all away or nothing. There are parts of that thing. There's a range of acceptable concessions that we can make to the counterparty to make it more attractive for them over the course of that negotiation. So you don't have to give the whole thing away. When they ask you for a 10% decrease, don't just give them 10%, right? You're going to make them work for it a little bit. Maybe give them 2%. Maybe give them 1% more, right? Make it and then ask for something in return. When you give something, ask for something in return, to our point earlier. So make sure that you understand the range of things that you may be able to give away.
knowing what you can and can't give away is an enormous value for sellers, because they got to know where their wiggle room is and they got to know what they can give away and what they can't. We have specific things that are proprietary that we don't just give away, right? Every company has a line in the sand. Know where your line is. So we asked earlier for folks to put in the sentences that get said to them that make it complicated for them to get a negotiation over the line. And this is one such submission. We talked about sticker shock, and this is the submission: way more expensive than I was expecting. How do we get through that after when the negotiation?
I would just ask, what were you expecting?
That's a good response. Leslie?
I think too, starting early on in the conversation, if that's something you hear really frequently, I would start having conversations about budget and what they think something like this is going to cost way earlier in the conversation, to avoid you putting in so much effort and energy and work and then having this happen all the time. And is it price relative to competitors? Are you more expensive than your competitors? Or is this just because they've never experienced pricing for a product or service like yours before?